Hey guys. Hello. And I'm going to keep doing it until Jerry acknowledges that that is a great intro. So it is a Thursday afternoon. Hope you're all doing well. I told you guys on Monday that I wasn't sure how this was going to play out today because of the fact that I am in New Jersey. As you can see, the background is different. And so I wanted to come on because where are the shutters? I'm out of town. Andrew. Jimmy, good to see you. And good to have all of you guys here. Make sure that you do smash the like button, share, do everything that we ask so that we can get this out to as many people as we can. I know this is an impromptu live, but of course, we always want to try to get the numbers up as best we can. So it is just going to be me today. But there are obviously a number of important stories that have come out in the past 24, 48 hours that were obviously very important to talk about. So there are a few different ways that we're going to go in terms of coverage today. We all know that everybody's been talking about Nikki Haley, and we will get to her. But very, very important in regards to where we start. And yes, of course, Holly, Rafa is as important as anything right now. And that's actually a very good point. The Democratic Party is clearly finally starting to get the reality of the situation, that the president of the United States is not only not popular, but that he is pretty much in a position where there's almost no chance that he can win as long as things may stay on the trajectory that they're on right now. And I don't really see any other circumstance where it's going to change, especially when you consider not just all the variables as far as the economy, whether from a social or from an economic standpoint. The president is clearly behind the eight ball in terms of his cognitive abilities. Trying to convince people that the president is going to be capable of running the country for another 5 years, much less with all due respect, be alive for another 5 years, is a very dangerous concept. And so what that brings me to is a clip that I wanted to get out there because I know you guys have probably been aware. James Carville, who always has a thing or two to say about what's going on, decided that he was going to go on a rant about what you should and shouldn't say. And it's always telling when the guy who clearly looks like he belongs on a porch with a shotgun saying, "Get off my lawn," in the bayou, if you will. Mr. Carville has a few things to say regarding the current circumstances with the poll numbers being down, with the enthusiasm being down, a lot to think about. So here we go.
Why don't you tear his face off and talk about...
First of all, the fact that he's got some shit on the bottom of his lip really says a lot. The guy probably was just out home eating a sandwich and thinking, I'm gonna go on and make a live and tell people exactly what I think because they ain't smart enough to think for themselves. With all due respect, when your accent sounds like this, it certainly doesn't give a lot of confidence that you really know what you're talking about. So we'll continue.
And you've already fought. No one would know it, but you keep it a secret. You fought raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. You know what? It's a really good idea. You know why it's a really good idea? Because it doesn't cost jobs.
So why did the president of the United States say that? The parliamentarian says I can't afford to do it, man. And you're coming out now, almost 4 years after the fact, that of all the issues that the president was supposedly going to push through, which in retrospect was probably the easiest one based on the trajectory, how it would have been implemented and so on, was the $15 minimum wage, and you couldn't even get that. So now you want to wax poetic about it's a really good idea. If it was such a good idea, why didn't the president actually fight for it? There are more pressing issues that I think he should have fought for, particularly the PRO Act, but needless to say, that could have been done, and it wasn't. So hindsight's always 2020, and trying to scare people into this idea that, oh yeah, you definitely want that $15 minimum wage. Yeah, you weren't saying that when he basically threw the parliamentarian under the bus to say, yeah, you can't afford this. Where the hell were you then, Carvey?
They have economists that have looked at this every way you can. And when you raise the minimum wage and say, well, it's only X people get the minimum wage. Yes, but there's X million people that get 20% above the minimum wage. And if you raise it, it'll go up. Oh, that's not a new idea, James. That's, Democratic populism. Mark Penn is not going to like that. Well, who gives a shit what Mark Penn likes or doesn't like? Try it on a poll. Try it on a poll.
I'm sorry, with that piece of food hanging off the end of his chin, it's almost as bad as trying to identify which direction George Latimer is looking in when he's talking to you. Sorry, I had to go there. I had to go there. Had to do it. That's funny, Andrew. I don't know. He may very well be what he eats. Although maybe there would be a little bit more blood. I don't know. But we'll continue.
And I'm going to tell you something else. That Mark Penn is not gonna like, or we gotta understand these people, James. We gotta balance. No, you don't. So next year, the Trump tax cuts are coming to be renewed because they want 10-year budget projections or some bullshit. It's just all bullshit they don't even tell you about. We're not gonna do it on incomes over $400,000 a year. And we're going to take that money and we're going to put it into something that helps young people. Because the generational thievery that has occurred in this country is criminality of the first order.
So if that's the case, and I will give him just a small amount of credit. For those of you who don't know who Mark Penn is, he is one of the Clintons' biggest political lackeys, especially for Hillary. Mark Penn is definitely one of the true swamp dwellers of American politics. But as the saying goes, it does take one to know one, so it's unsurprising that he would go there. We'll continue.
And we keep wondering why these young people aren't coming home to the Democrats, why blacks are not coming home to the Democrats.
You don't support a living wage. You don't support universal health care. You do not support a clean environment, which is clean air and water. You support endless war, and you support a genocide. All those things before the genocide was reason to say, this is not a party worth supporting because it doesn't support working people. You have directly influenced the course of action regarding inflation. When you talk about the Trump tax cuts, we can go back to look at the Bush tax cuts, which Obama made permanent. And now you can look at the Trump tax cuts, which Biden made permanent. So does it really matter who passes it if the person who has the chance to undo them doesn't undo them? The gap between the rich and poor grows ever larger. The fever pitch of anger is only going to get worse. And as I said, I'm not even addressing the genocide. That's a completely separate issue, but it's going to get better.
Because Democratic messaging is full of shit. That's why. And talk about cost of living. And we're going to help deal with this. And don't talk about fucking Gaza and student loans. That's so out. That guy Della Volpe is pretty good.
Don't talk about Gaza, guys. It's not going to help us get votes. Just pretend like the genocide isn't happening. That's the key. Pretend like it's not happening, and then they'll vote for us. Oh, it's not really a genocide. It's just a conflict. It's complicated. You don't really understand. You're just a bunch of kids. Understand that you cannot afford to own a home, that you cannot afford healthy food, that you cannot have clean drinking water, and your air is contaminated. But don't you talk about that Gaza. That's how we're going to win. Just don't talk about it. Look at the rage in his Cajun face. And with that little bit of food, dangling from his chin. I'm telling you, it's like he just. Now you listen here, young whippersnapper. I'm going to tell you a thing or two about how things are done down yonder where we're from. Oh Lord, got just a little bit more. We'll finish it out.
15 issues. You know what the number 14 and 15 issue were total? Student debt and gossip.
How many people that are, let's say, millennial or Gen Z actually do political polls? Now, the idea that you don't think that Gaza is a make or break issue in this political environment, you have to be a moron. Now, granted, for example, down in South Florida, where Jen is running against DWS, is Gaza going to be the number one issue for people living in the district? Probably not. It might not be the top 5, but it's a very important issue that can decide if you're on the side of genocide, I can't be on your side, so I'll be on the other side. It helps when the candidate in question is infinitely better on all of the substantial issues that matter to the person who's running for office. For example, Jen supports a living wage. Debbie doesn't. Jen supports universal health care. Debbie doesn't. Jen supports a clean environment. You want to call it the Green New Deal? Fine. Jen supports a clean environment. Debbie doesn't. Jen is not funded by corporate special interests. Debbie is. Jen supports ending insider trading. Debbie doesn't. Jen supports ending endless war and overt spending on endless war and genocide. Debbie is one of AIPAC's most successful foot soldiers. I can keep going down the list, but you get my point. It's easy enough to say that on these levels, for example, that the issue of Gaza and student debt for the average voter is not at the top of the list. That's fair, because it isn't something that necessarily directly affects them on a day-to-day basis. But to suggest that it isn't a consequential issue that is going to have significant ramifications on this election and many elections to come, because the Democratic Party has been kind of staring into the abyss for the longest time, and they're finally going to sink into it for many reasons, not the least of which is the current presidential nominee, who they think is going to beat Donald Trump in the fall. Now, at this point, I don't know if they really think he's going to win, but trying to convince people that they have to vote your way simply because you're trying to scare the ever-living shit out of them, most people have hit bottom. They don't care. There's a reason they do not care at this point, and I don't blame them. And a prime example of that is what just happened the other day with Robert De Niro. Now, look, everyone, I'm sure, has a very strong opinion about Bob De Niro. He is one of the great actors of our time. I would never take that away from him in terms of his ability to entertain. That's what he does. He is an actor, but he also thinks that he is somehow more than an actor in the sense that he has a pulse on where the average American is today regarding their political discourse, but he doesn't. He is an extremely affluent, connected individual. He has been for a very long time. He clearly does not like Trump on a personal level. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But he also believes that everything is perfectly fine with President Biden, and we have to stay the course, no matter how bad things are, because it will only get worse with Trump. Well, whose fault is that? Whose fault is it that we're stuck where we are? Bob doesn't want to talk about that. He just wants to talk about how bad Trump is and how much he wants us to get away from him in November, despite what the numbers are saying. Oh, and also to influence potential judicial outcomes, which is the reason that he went to Lower Manhattan the other day to make this statement, which we're going to play now.
It's so weird that Donald Trump is just across the street, because he doesn't belong in my city. I don't.
Your city, Bob. The city doesn't belong to you. People can go wherever the hell they want. That level of ignorance, it's incredible. And I always say, if you want to know what really hurts the Democrat, I mean, listen, the Democratic Party is almost beyond repair at this point. However, if there is one thing I can say that truly turns voters off, it's rich liberals waxing poetic about what you, the working person, needs. And Bob De Niro is one of the very worst. We'll continue.
I don't know where he belongs, but he surely doesn't belong here. We New Yorkers used to tolerate him when he was just another grubby real estate hustler masquerading as a big shot, a two-bit playboy lying his way into the tabloids, pretending to be a spokesperson for himself.
What does this have to do with anything? De Niro talking about Trump on a personal level, that Trump is a sleazebag. Yeah, Trump is sleazy. This is not like a new concept. There isn't this new information that's being presented. Boy, oh boy, if you only knew. It really says a lot. We'll agree to disagree on that one, Andrew. There's nothing, like I said, there's nothing wrong with hating Trump, but this is on a whole other level because Bob De Niro does not identify with the average person. Bob De Niro does wear lifts in his shoes. We'll continue.
He was calling it as himself for himself to fool the press into inflating his net worth. A clown. But this city is pretty accommodating. We make room for clowns.
Now, apparently, one was trying to interpret that what he was saying regarding clowns was that he was calling all Trump supporters clowns. I don't think so. I think he was just identifying Trump as one. That may change. I haven't heard all of what he had to say, but we will continue and see if there was anything in particular where he really went and took a direct shot at the Trump vote.
Have them all over the city. People who do crazy things in the street, we tolerate it. It's part of the city. It's part of the culture. But not a person like Trump who will eventually run the country. That does not work, and we all know that.
So what are you selling, Bob? I think is the question. If you're selling Joe Biden and this current administration, you're not winning. This is the thing that so many people in politics fail to learn. And it's also something that has become a really big problem over the past several elections. Yes, that is Rupert Pupkin, Henry. For those of you who haven't seen The King of Comedy, it's actually a very interesting movie. I would recommend it. I would definitely say that if there was an alternative that made sense, this wouldn't be a contest. If it was Bernie Sanders going up against Trump right now, Bernie would win. But that's not what we're dealing with here. What we're dealing with is a broken republic being led by an administration that is not helping the average person. They're just not. There's a few policies sprinkled in here and there. Very good pick, like my music. And that is the end of the clip. Midnight Run, if you haven't seen that film, is one of the best movies I've ever seen. And I saw that when I was very young. Probably one of the first R-rated movies I ever saw. And obviously it had a lot to do with the cursing. And yes, Bernie would wipe the floor with Trump. But there's a reason why. Because this is about whether you're bought and paid for by the system, which Bernie, again, you could say he's adjacent in some respects as far as his loyalty to Joe and the Democratic Party and the way that he was willing to play the role he thinks he needs to play in order to stop Trump. I'm sorry, pal, but it doesn't work that way. And the reason it doesn't work that way is because no matter how bad you think Trump is, what he basically is a complete gift to the corporate establishment for them to basically go carte blanche on all the worst heavy-handed shit that you could possibly think of, because at the end of the day, what they're counting on is the fear of Trump, and that is what is ultimately going to make the difference at the polls in November. I don't agree. I don't. I think that this is much deeper. I think we were heading in this direction even before October 7th. Now that October 7th has happened, now it's wide open. It is wide open. There is no hiding anymore. They do not care what you think. They do not care what you have. And even though our friend in the chat who still thinks that we should support Joe is coming from a place where he lives in a country that has things that we don't have. Canada has universal health care. Canada has universal education. Canada has better wages. They have problems, no question. But the basic fundamentals do not exist in this country like they do there. It's part of the reason why somebody like Trump is able to rise to the top. And yes, it is a political witch hunt, not because Trump isn't guilty of certain crimes, infractions. We can all say that. But the fact of the matter is, the powers that be want you to believe that Trump is the only person who breaks the law in this country. And that's why he has to be taken out. That's the reason. Because he doesn't protect empire the way that Joe does. But now you can't protect it anymore. People can see it for what it is. That is the danger of where we stand right now. Anybody, especially people like De Niro, and remember, the loudest people in the room right now that are defending President Biden are people like Bob De Niro, that are in such privileged positions in society, it doesn't matter who wins. Their lives are beyond the pale. Most of you will never understand what those lives are like. The people they know, the places they go, the food they eat, the women they sleep with, all of those things. It's a concept that I do not think most people could even wrap their heads around if they even understood it. De Niro has lived a very privileged life for the better part of 40 plus years. There is no conceivable way that he can understand what the average person is going through when he talks like this. Now, don't get me wrong. We do have true class traders that are out there that are from the entertainment world. John Cusack, Susan Sarandon. Forgive me, but those are the top two that come to mind, at least in terms of people who have been A-list actors. They're not A-listers anymore. They're obviously, not doing major blockbuster movies, but they are people who are of immense affluence, wealth, and success. And they have been crystal clear that they are on the side of working people. And that matters a lot. And Jonathan Glazer would be another example, Holly. Thank you for mentioning that one. But Bob De Niro does not care. It seems to me that with him, everything is about the fact that on a personal level, he can't stand Trump. And that is why he acts the way that he does. You will never, ever hear him talk about, this is very similar. And listen, I wasn't even going to do a segment on it because it isn't worth it. I made one social media post regarding Ken Burns. For those of you who know who Ken Burns is, he is the voice of the American documentary. The two most noteworthy is Baseball and The Roosevelts. And if you have ever seen those documentaries, they are phenomenal, and he did them. But what you must remember about Ken Burns is very similar to Bob De Niro. Ken Burns gave the commencement at Brandeis University. For those of you who don't know about Brandeis, it is one of the most affluent Northeastern universities in the nation, and it is overwhelmingly Jewish, Zionist Jewish. So he went and made that speech, and he didn't say anything at all about lack of health care, lack of a living wage, lack of a clean environment, endless war, and a genocide. No, what he wanted to do was get up on this soapbox and talk about how terrible Trump is. No one's here saying Trump is great, because he isn't. And for those who think Trump is great, trust me, he is the only thing that Trump truly represents is a path to chaos where if you want the system to break, and let's be honest, the system is breaking at the seams every minute of every day, Trump is going to get you there a lot faster than death by 1,000 paper cuts, which is exactly what the Biden administration is doing. That's how we're going to get there. But make no mistake, the key issues that matter right now are not being addressed, because then you'd have to address the fallacy that is our American democratic republic, because it's broken. Just the fact that you have, if we're really looking at the numbers, 60% of the single family homes in this country are going to be owned by the private equity giants. I mean, talk about violating antitrust laws. It is not within the interests of the American people. It's the same reason you don't get tax cut or tax hikes on the rich. Now, certain states have attempted to do things like Massachusetts, for example, and it has been pretty successful. But I'm telling you, it doesn't matter if it's Democrats or Republicans. One hand washes the other. Most of the bad shit is going to be done by the GOP, and the Democrats are going to ensure that it stays that way. They're not going to pass the type of policies the GOP does, but they'll make sure that they stay. So at some point, you got to say, all right, when are we going to turn a corner? Not with this administration, Andrew. There are people who truly believe that we are living at a time where things actually are better with Democrats than they are with Republicans. What I can tell you, the one thing that the Democrats do better is that they protect empire better than the Republicans do. The Republicans will give you a kill or be killed type of almost libertarian-like economy. If you can hack it, you can do phenomenal. If you can't, you're fucked. In the Democratic-run government, you are basically on the same trajectory, only it's not a nosedive, it's a managed decline. It's that death by 1,000 paper cuts. You're still going to die. It's just going to be a lot more painful because it's going to happen a lot slower. Until we accept the reality that we need to drastically change our infrastructure in this system. Do you know how many opportunities the Democrats had to codify women's reproductive freedom over the last 50 years and didn't do it? Specifically in the Clinton and Obama years, would have been so easy to do. Why would they do it? It's a cash cow. It scares the shit out of people, and it gets them to keep voting that way as long as things don't change regarding a living wage and universal health care. That's the reason. Now, as far as book bans are concerned, that's a mixed bag because it all depends on what narrow concept we're talking about. There's always nuances involved. The problem is that you have the extremes that are always in the center of it all. All reading material is perfectly acceptable. It isn't. Or let's ban everything, which is, of course, censorship, and that's wrong. So if you really want to get to the nooks and crannies of why things are the way that they are, remember, this is a system that doesn't answer to working people at all. And I'm going to give you a great example of that before we get to our next topic. So I can tell you guys that despite everything that is going on right now, as much momentum as Jen has and has an opportunity to win, I can assure you that the old hats that are still running the labor unions are going to get behind TPP, anti-labor, Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Now, the example or the reason that is given to support her is because she votes the right way 95% of the time is the excuse. Now, the other 5% of the time is really fucking bad, but that 95% is good. And what that really means is that she votes lockstep with the Democratic Party line on the labor. Does anybody pay any attention to what's going on regarding how labor is going down by the head and has been for the longest time? And why is that? Because leadership doesn't fucking care about what's best for the current status of their rank and file as well as the future. These are the concepts that are never being addressed. It's not enough to say this is a reliable Dem vote. There are some good things that President Biden has done regarding labor, but you always have to measure it on the baseline of, do the pros outweigh the cons? And the truth is, they don't. Now, the one thing I will say, especially as it pertains to what's going on in Gaza right now, and the dangers of what this presidential administration has been doing, which is just downright devastating. And that is correct, Carls. Biden is talking about appointing Supreme Court justices in the next 4 years. Here's all you need to know about the Supreme Court, specifically as it relates to Justice Thomas and Justice Alito. If Biden wins, they will stay in their seats for another 4 years. If Trump wins, they will retire and 2 new Supreme Court justices will be appointed. And that's how this works. The only way a conservative judge is leaving the bench with a Democratic president is in a box. That's it. At some point, you have to see the game for what it is. That's what you got to do. And at that point, your vote becomes tantamount of importance, and they can't ignore you anymore. And the movement that has been growing in terms of MAGA, there are negatives associated with it, but never, ever underestimate the fact that a significant portion of that movement is about restoring some semblance of a strong economy for working people, whether they're in trades, unions, etc. Now, you may not think you're going to get that with the GOP, but for them, they think they're going to get it with somebody like Trump. So it's understandable that when desperation sets in, people are going to be looking in a lot of different directions. With that being said, there is a very dangerous element that still exists within the GOP. Well, the one policy that I thought Trump did that was exceptionally good for American industry was axing the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which absolutely would have been passed under Hillary Clinton. So that's a big deal. Now, does that change the fact that Trump still executed or granted multinational corporations to leave the U.S. and go to Mexico? Of course not. We're still on a path to hell. And it doesn't matter who's at the controls until we unify around this idea that the working class can become a well-oiled machine. And if for those of you who are not aware of the Trans-Pacific Partnership and how much worse that is than NAFTA, please do your research on that. And that is something that Debbie Wasserman Schultz is one of 3 Democrats that voted to fast track, if you remember that. Now, with that being said, we have to address who is one of the most dangerous GOP representatives in this country right now, who is a true sociopathic narcissist who has every intention of doing whatever is necessary to grab power. And she is much more cunning than Nikki Haley. And that, of course, is Representative Elise Stefanik from New York. Here we go.
As long as I serve the American people, I will defend George Washington's vision of religious pluralism and freedom.
How dare you enact George Washington in this moment with those fucking flags behind you? The whole concept of what George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and other founding fathers had for religious freedom was that your religion was never going to supersede the state. That is the separation of church and state. And this is only getting worse. But the problem with somebody like Elise Stefanik is that she is not a true believer. She is simply a political opportunist of the highest order. She cannot win statewide election in New York for obvious reasons. But she really wants that VP slot. She wants to climb that ladder. And she feels that by marrying herself to the Israel lobby, that this is going to be her best shot. Let me tell you something. If she doesn't get the VP slot, considering how things are moving in the state of New York right now, it wouldn't shock me in the least if she gave strong consideration to running for governor against Kathy Hochul. And let me tell you, she would have a shot at winning. Now, if she became the governor of New York, pencil it in that she is going to be a favorite to be the GOP nominee for president in the not too distant future. This is how these things happen, guys. And she is banking on this idea that by becoming the most visible Israel supporter in the most Jewish populated state, that this is a path for her political ambitions. She may be right. We'll continue.
Today, this means crushing anti-Semitism at home and supplying the state of Israel with what it needs, when it needs it, without conditions to achieve total victory in the face.
So wouldn't that increase anti-Semitism by continuing to facilitate a genocide? I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy. We must crush anti-Semitism that we're helping facilitate. Doesn't jive, people. You know, usually it's an American flag that is over the shoulder next to the Israeli flag. We're getting to a point now where, you know how they were waving the Ukraine flags on the House floor recently? I want to know how long it's going to take before they're waving the Israeli flags. You just go back and forth, two sides to side. But Stefanik has really made it clear it is all about political opportunism. All of it. And she wants that power. We'll continue.
Face of evil. Chants of death to America are not hollow slogans. They are a promise that what happened here on October 7th could happen in the United States.
Hamas is going to attack the United States now? That's what's going to happen? Well, let's just say for the sake of argument that Hamas had the capability of doing it. You have murdered, mass murdered, almost 20,000 children. And as I said on our last live stream, how many caliphates are being created as we speak as a result of those actions? It's easy to say these things when you're basically protected at all times. But as Jen likes to say, they will not be able to build their moats wide enough. They just won't. They're going to try, but it won't work. How they don't know that this is a political loser now, that there is a real uprising happening in this country. They can deny it all they want, but it clearly is shifting focus in another direction. And let me tell you something, guys, especially in lieu of what's happened with the Libertarian Party. And there is a reasonable chance that we're going to have Angela McArdle, the chair of the Libertarian Party, on the live stream, potentially as early as next week, to discuss the fallout of what's happened with Chase Oliver becoming their nominee, and a lot of people flocking away from the Libertarian Party now, and most likely going to Trump. But I got to tell you, I really think that, as crazy as this may seem for a lot of people, Jill Stein is probably going to do a lot better this time around than I think a lot of people realize. Because at least there is somebody who is saying that this is a genocide and this has got to stop. And that's just to stop it. That's not to even suggest that we are heading in the right direction. We're not. But something's got to give. Do I think Elise Stefanik is bloodthirsty the way that other neocons and neolibs are? Maybe not. But she is a very cunning, career-minded politician. She is going to go wherever the wind blows that she thinks is going to help her. If you have watched her trajectory since she's been involved in politics, she is a chameleon of the highest order. Whatever she thinks is going to help her politically is the exact direction that she's going to go in.
Unless Hamas and its jihadist accomplices are eliminated. And it is the United States' high honor and high responsibility to support Israel's effort. I have been clear at home, and I will be clear here. There is no excuse for an American president to block aid to Israel, aid that was duly passed by the Congress. There is no excuse to ease sanctions on Iran, paying a $6 billion ransom to the world's leading state sponsor of terror, or to...
That is such bullshit, and she knows it, and she says it anyway. That was Iran's money. We withheld it, and she's still lying through her teeth. And she knows it. I know this woman is smart. This is not a ding-dong from the deep south who doesn't know their asshole from a hole in the ground. Elise Stefanik is a very sharp cookie. And those are the most dangerous people in politics because they're not only willing to play the game for the sake of having a top flight career in politics, but they're also smart enough to know how to take power, the most influential type of power. And there is no line she won't cross. She's making that painfully clear that there is no line that she won't cross for the Israel lobby, for Wall Street, for Silicon Valley. It doesn't matter. She wants the brass ring. And I'm telling you all this now, that she's got multiple aces up her sleeve. And that is why she's saying what she's saying. President Biden withheld aid from Israel. Are you fucking kidding me? I mean, even the most hardened conservative has to know that that's not true. But she says it anyway. And on top of that, she continues to perpetuate the falsehood that is Iran stole money. No, we withheld their money. It's their money, not ours. We do not control them. I know we'd like to, but that's not how this works. We'll continue.
Dither and hide while our friends fight for their lives. No excuse, full stop. That's why I'm proud to have sponsored or backed every measure to aid Israel that has come before the United States Congress.
Absolutely you have, and absolutely you will continue to do. There will be no bill that has any benefit to Israel that you will not sign. You know why? Because you're bought by the Israel lobby. Just like my congresswoman, just like the president, just like 90+% of Congress is. She's not changing, and she is enthusiastically supporting this bullshit. That is why the most depraved people typically enter politics, because they're willing to sell out their whole fucking country for their own personal ambitions. And Elise Stefanik is 1,000% that person.
Every single one. And it's why for years I have been a leading proponent and partner to President Trump in his historic support for Israeli independence and security, including moving the U.S. Embassy to its rightful place in Jerusalem.
That is actually something that has probably perpetuated more instability in the Middle East than just about anything else. And you don't hear President Biden saying, maybe we should put the embassy back in Tel Aviv, because they're all in this bullshit together. And of all the things that Trump did during his presidency, on the domestic front, clearly the tax cuts for the rich was the worst. And on the foreign front, moving the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem was an absolute cardinal sin. And this woman is standing there celebrating it like it is a great fucking thing.
Israel is indeed a miracle, an outpost of freedom, of Western values, of civilization, a striking example of human potential, the physical embodiment of Herzl's maxim, if you will it, it is no dream. It's the same.
You have to know that she just came up with that on the set. Somebody told her to say that before she went out there. No doubt about it. My opinion.
Same founding ethos that we prize in America, the American dream.
The American dream is dead, or as George Carlin likes to say, you have to be asleep to believe it. It doesn't exist. It does for somebody like Elise Stefanik. The American dream is alive and well for people like her. She 1000% is benefiting from this system, but she is one of a few. It is not the norm, and it never will be. But she proudly stands on ceremony, waxing poetic about, we stand proudly with Israel. This is what we do. Well, if you want to stand proudly with Israel, that's fine. But as far as I'm concerned, and I think we can all agree on this, we must make it our collective effort to ensure that the Israel lobby is registered as a foreign agent. That is the only path that we have forward. And speaking of where the conclusion of this conversation will come, and proving once again why you just don't know, how bad this can possibly get. I've often thought that we've got really bad representatives, but then there are ones that take it to a whole other level. And from where I stand, what we do have are very emotionally driven supporters in this country of certain issues. And one of them, which has always been the issue that I have felt, especially regarding Donald Trump, is that people will support anything that they interpret as being against Trump. And that, of course, leads us to Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley, who is currently in Israel and signing bombs, saying, finish them. Do not forget, just a couple of months ago, the entire liberal class was trying to convince everybody to support this woman in the GOP primary against Trump. Say what you will about Trump. He's not doing something like this. This is so beyond sick. And the fact that you don't have people who, let's say, supported Nikki in the primary, coming out and saying, man, I really wish I didn't do that. I didn't know she was this bad. Well, of course, the average person doesn't know shit from Shinola, but that's a whole other problem. But the idea that people were championing this woman at the top of their lungs, saying that, oh, we should support Nikki Haley over Donald Trump. I don't agree, Andrew. I have a lot of issues with Trump, but his instinct is very similar to Bernie's when it comes to this type of stuff. Trump talks a big game, but the truth is he doesn't want the smoke. He recognizes how bad war actually is. He can say a lot of things right now because he's not in charge. And if he thinks it's going to help him politically, it will. He will say it. She definitely wants to be Trump's VP, Holly, no question. That's not going to happen. The fact that Trump came out and said, I appreciate Nikki wanting to be my VP, but that's totally not happening. And credit to Trump for at least being smart enough not to put her anywhere near the White House. But, Elise Stefanik is going to be trying to take Nikki's place. That's why she's doing what she's doing. I want to know what it takes for somebody to sign a bomb, to sign a fucking bomb with finish them. That is incredible. And a total lack of humanity. And here's the other thing. If we were living in a time where maybe this was a couple of weeks after October 7th, and people were being politically opportunistic about the circumstance. Like if this was October 21st, and this is Nikki Haley doing this, it would still be unbelievably disgusting and genocidal in its own right. But the idea that she's doing it now, 8 months later, knowing everything we know and everything we've seen, and she's doing this, and there are people who still want her in some position of power, fuck you and the horse you rode in on. Every last one of you motherfuckers. Every last one of you. And the scariest part is that it is the affluent liberal class that fucking loves this woman. Do they still love her? And again, Andrew, it's easy to surmise that that's what would have happened. He's not there. Who's to say October 7th would have happened? We don't know. We only know what we know now. As bad a president as I've felt that Biden has been on the domestic front, particularly when it comes to health care, a living wage, a minimum wage, and the fact that he didn't make it a point to fight for the PRO Act to end right-to-work laws in the United States, which he could have done in his first 100 days. That could have been his signature policy, and he didn't do it. That's bad enough. His foreign policy is that much worse. So again, we don't know what Trump would have done. I know what Trump did in his first term. I know that he droned a hell of a lot of people, but he at least started moving the needle in the right direction. Remember, George Bush got things started, Obama took it to 5 wars, and Trump at least attempted to pull things back. And then it was an opportunities for Biden to take us out of Afghanistan, but within 5 seconds, we're in another war. So if we're really looking at this objectively, and again, I'm not here defending Trump. We need another path. The concept that a lot of liberals fail to recognize is that the majority of people are done with this system. They want to move away from it. They want a new path. And why would you not want a new path? People can't afford to live. So unless we are cognizant of that reality, we are heading down a very dark road, and it's only going to get worse. The IDF came out earlier today and said specifically, this war will continue for at least another 7 months, which of course is also a smoke signal to say this war will continue through the election. So it's going to be front and center, and there is no way to ignore it. They're going to try. There's going to be a lot of people in high places that are going to do everything they can, like James Carville said at the beginning, to do everything in their capacity not to address Gaza, to try to sweep it under the rug. But it's not going to work. It's too big of an issue now. And by trying ever so desperately to make it seem like that this isn't happening, it's a failure. And Nikki Haley is a real scum of the earth. Period. For those of you who have tuned in today, and I appreciate you all being here, Teresa, your support is tremendously appreciated. For those of you who are here, if you are so inclined for our small but mighty channel, do make sure that you are not only subscribed, hit the like button, and share, but also do consider becoming a patron if you so choose, or supporting our friend who is running for a very important seat right now. That is where I would be putting money, personally, at least until August 20th. That's where I would be contributing, and I really appreciate that. Mark J., you are a first-rate analyst, among the best out there. Thank you for your work and for being on the right side of history. Thank you for supporting the channel. With your support, it allows me to take an hour out of my workday to come on and do this. Tony, Nikki Haley, the most psychopathic politician? I don't know. There's a lot of competition for that one. She certainly tries to be. I think she's a total narcissistic sociopath. I mean, that I definitely believe. I always try to measure it against certain people like the Lindsey Grahams of the world, the Tom Cottons of the world. Dems have their share too. Don't get me wrong. Debbie's a bloodthirsty representative. They suck. Our representatives really suck. And what is effectively happening here is we're kind of going through, I don't want to say the death throes, but the system itself is changing ever so much, ever so quickly. And that's kind of where we're at. What does the future hold? I'm not sure. But what I do know, and I believe this, we are in a very unique period in our history. I know a lot of people always feel that their period is unique, that they're living through, but this is very unique. This is really, really unique and very dangerous. That's there will be one this month in June, Sam. I think, and for those of you, and thank you for bringing that up because this is very important. I don't know, Colin, are you here right now or are you just on silent? Because if you're not, I don't know if you put up that image. I got to check. I have an image here that I want you guys to see. This is important. We have some political stuff that we have to discuss. I think I can probably grab it from social media. I just want to show you guys something before we depart for today. For those of you who obviously have been paying attention, I obviously have to choose my words carefully. Yes, Chris, they can be, but the importance of doing a poll, depending on how big of a poll, matters for this reason. What it does is it gives the district an opportunity to learn more about a potential race that they are not aware of. Now, that's important. So I don't have the graphic. I wanted to get that graphic. I'm going to see if I can grab it, but I'm going to load this up right now so you guys can take a look at it before we head out for the day. So this is on Saturday for anybody who is currently in South Florida or anyone you know that is in South Florida. Jen's official 2024 volunteer kickoff is going to be at American Legion Post 92 in Hollywood, Florida, this Saturday from 12 to 5. So I would highly recommend spreading the word and letting everybody know that we need as many boots on the ground as possible. And look, whether you're in Canada, whether you're in South Carolina, whether you're in New York, I know we've got people in the chat from all over the country. Even if you're not able to provide boots on the ground, you can still sign up to volunteer for phone and text banking, because that's very important too. And helping out on social media is also very important as well. And so what I'm going to try to do right now is I'm going to try to grab this image from social media that can be shared. So I think I can do this on Twitter, because I'm pretty sure that was posted there. That's probably one of the easiest places to find a current image, which I think is very important. Come on, give me something, people. Or do I have to go for Gen 4 FL25? Try Facebook. See if that comes up. Okay, here we go. All right, this is about as good as I can get, but as you guys can see, in the upper left-hand corner, if you can squint in, and I'm going to see if I can expand. There we go. Okay, so as you can see, this is the kickoff event for this upcoming Saturday. From 12 to 5, it's going to be a planned out day. We've got the meet and greet from 12 to 1:30, 1:30 to 4 canvassing, and then a debrief from 4 to 4:30 back at Legion 92. And this is, again, American Legion Post 92 in Hollywood, Florida. So this is important. And this is very important for spreading the word. And yes, Andrew, that would be a great call. Hi, I'm from a country that has things you don't, but you really would like to have if you could. So all of that matters. And remember, for those of you who are not following the campaign, Gen for FL25 on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Make sure that you are subscribed to all of those channels so you can stay up to date with everything that's going on right now. It is of immense importance that we follow. Here's what I would say, Metal. We'll leave on this note. Debbie does have more money because she's corrupt, but Jen is going to have a fighting chance because she's got a lot more funds this time than last, plus name ID, plus a better district lines. All those things matter. So keep that in mind and make sure that you support if you can. Smash that like button, share, subscribe, do all those things that we ask you to do. It is tremendously important. It is very much appreciated. Hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll see you Monday.